Alright, now let's style our boxes when they are active. So when we click on a box, we can see that first of all, the shadow disappears, okay? And also, the position of the box goes down a little bit so that it covers the original space occupied by the shadow, which means that it goes down by 4 pixels, the vertical value of our original shadow. So to style the boxes when they are active, we're gonna access the box class, okay, and then colon active, and just make sure that there is no space between colon and text. So first of all, the box shadow property is going to change, okay, so both values this time are going to be 0, okay, we can leave the color. And also, to make the box go down by 4 pixels, we're going to use the top position, or the top property, that we're going to set to 4 pixels, but we're going to need to give our box a position of relative. Okay, so it's like the box actually is moving relative to its original position. Okay, so let's try this. So you can see that the box goes down by 4 pixels and the shadow disappears. All right. If we look at the final page, we will see that the box, when we click on it, it takes some time. Okay, and we can see a transition effect before it goes down. All right. So we're going to use a transition property. Okay. Like we did before in the first project. The property we're going to be looking at here is going to be both the box shadow, okay, and the top position. But we can just go for all, which means that we're looking at all the properties of that specific item. Okay. For the duration, we're going to go for 0.2 seconds. Okay. And we're not going to specify any timing function for now because it's optional. All right. So now when we click on the box, let's refresh, let's save and refresh so that I can see the transition effect. And we can see the transition effect there. Okay. One important point, like we did in the previous projects, we're going to need to add a few more lines for the transition property, okay, for cross-browser compatibility. And we're going to add something just before the transition word. So we're going to add WebKit, okay, and then Moz for Mozilla, and O for Opera, and MS for Internet Explorer, and that's it. Okay. For the box shadow, we need to do the same thing, but only for Safari and Mozilla. So wherever we used box shadow, we need to add a couple of lines, one for Safari and one for Mozilla. Okay. So I'm going to do it for the first one. Okay. And then we're going to pause and do it for the other ones. Make sure you do the same on your own. So I'm going to add this one for Mozilla and this one, WebKit, for Safari. Okay. So now I've got these couple of lines added to all my box shadow properties. Okay. Okay. So just make sure that you do the same. Okay. Now we're going to move to the Start Reset button. Okay. So we're going to be creating a div following the choices div, and we're going to give it an ID, Start Reset. And also I'm going to place some text there, Start Game. And now let's style this div. If we look at our Start Reset button, we will see that most of the properties of the button are very similar to the properties of the box class. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are going to copy the properties of the box class into the styling of the start reset button, and then we are going to adjust the styling for the button. Okay, so let's take out a few properties we don't need, like the line height, okay, or the height, the float property. Okay, we're not going to need margin right, we're going to need the margin property to center the button. So you're going to go for a top and bottom margins of 0 and auto for left and right. Okay, and now it's centered. Also, we're going to add some padding. Let's go for 10 pixels. And the background color, we're going to change it. Basically, this is a white transparent color, and it looks like this because the color behind it is blue. Okay, so I'm going to use the RGBA function. Okay, and I'm going to use the values corresponding to white. And then I'm going to go for 0.5 for the transparency. Okay. For the width, let's make it a little bit smaller. Even smaller than that. And make sure that the other text is still going to fit, which is reset game. Let's see. Okay, it looks fine. Okay, now we are going to style the hover and active states of the start button. Okay, so we're going to need exactly the same properties of the hover and active states of the box class. So all we're going to do is we're going to add another selector next to the box hover selector, okay, for the start reset button. And it's going to be colon hover. And similarly, we'll do the same thing for the active state. Okay. All right, now let's add our time remaining box. So let's go to our index.html file and create a new div following our start reset button, and give it an ID time remaining. Okay, so inside this div we're going to place some text. Okay, so time remaining 60 seconds. So I'm going to place the number inside a span and give it an ID time remaining value. So we'll use the ID later on with JavaScript to access this value and change it. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the styling sheet and style the time remaining box. So we're going to access it using its ID, which is time remaining. Alright, so let's give it some width and padding, then position it in our container. So first of all, let's give it a width of 200 pixels and a padding of about 10 pixels. Okay, and let's position this inside our container. So we're going to give it a position attribute absolute. Okay. And then we are going to give it a top property of 300 pixels, or a bit more, 350 or 400, okay, or a little bit less, 395, okay, and a left position or left property of 300 or 400. Okay, let's change the width to 150. Let's make it slightly bigger. Okay, it looks fine. And now let's add some background color. Okay, so if we want to get the same color as this color is created using the RGBA function. Okay, so we're going to use a green color with some transparency. Okay, so I'm going to use the RGBA function. So I'm going to use 3 values as following: 181, 235, and then 36. And then I'm going to add some transparency there. Okay, 0.8. Okay, or a little bit less than that, 0.78. Okay, you can change the color if you want to. You can use the Control-Alt-K method and just set the transparency using this slider. Okay, and you can choose any color you want there. Okay, now let's style the corners and just add some border radius. Okay, okay, let's go for 2 pixels or 3. Okay, and also let's add some box shadow. So again, we're going to use 0 pixels for the horizontal value and 4 pixels for the vertical one. And we're going to use a gray color for the shadow. Okay, so we're going to use the RGBA function again. So we're going to use the black color. Okay, and then we're going to use a transparency of 0.2. And that looks fine. Okay. Now we'll need to hide the time remaining div initially. Okay, so we can use either the display property or the visibility property. We have used the display property earlier with the correct and try again boxes. So let's use the visibility property this time to learn both. So when we use the visibility, we're going to set it to hidden. Okay. Something for you to remember: the difference between the visibility hidden and the display none properties is that if we apply visibility hidden to a certain element in our page, that element is still going to be present in the page, okay, and it's going to interact with the other elements. So at the moment, this one is not interacting with the other elements, only because it's got a position property of absolute. Okay, so the other elements are behaving as if it doesn't exist at all. Okay, the display none property is going to hide the element, and the element is not going to interact anymore with the other elements. Okay. All right. Now that we understood the difference, let's just use the display property to make it easy to standardize all the functions in our code later on when we are writing JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to set display to none, and I'm just going to comment this one so that you can remember it. Okay,